understanding the chemistry and the subtle details of what runs things and metabolism, I kind of knew the science. But unfortunately, medicine is not really scientifically based all the time. The actual knowledge of science lags about 10 to 20 years, believe it or not. So when a
Wow.
scientist discovers something brand new, and right now the database of the knowledge is doubling like every 6 months to a year. No one can keep up. So having my background in biochemistry, neurochemistry, I kind of knew things, if it's real or it's just part of the hidden agenda and the the big business behind medicine. So as I went through my undergrad, I did a lot of experiments with rats. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to. So I learned a lot on what is experimenting and reading scientific papers and knowing exactly quickly what the bottom line is. And then I went to medical school, and the first thing I noticed in medical school is it was very detailed in one aspect, but it really missed a whole other aspect of what is true on what creates health and what creates good biochemistry, neurochemistry, what creates happy humans. It did that a little bit, but really nothing, no nutrition at all. And when you did get nutrition, it wasn't even real nutrition. It was nutrition explained through the eyes of the big business. So when I went in and I started practicing, I had a lot of knowledge of how foods create health and how lifestyle can create disease, or good lifestyle can actually help a person get healthier. And so as I started seeing my patients, I introduced food as preliminary. So all of a sudden, patients would come to me, for example, and they have high blood pressure. So I would say, okay, you have high blood pressure. So instead of quickly going to give you the blood pressure medicine, you got to figure out why you have high blood pressure. And high blood pressure is not something that's natural in humans. Humans have high blood pressure because they're nutritionally deficient, or they're eating too much of something, usually too much sugar, which creates high insulin, which creates high blood pressure. You also have a drainage of magnesium. Magnesium is a mineral that helps on many processes in the body, including blood pressure. So all of a sudden you say to yourself, with this patient in front of you, what should you do? Give them a high blood pressure medicine, or teach them a little about maybe what's causing him to have high blood pressure or her high blood pressure. So you start with basic things. You start with foundational things. Foundational things is eating properly. People don't eat properly. People eat excessively. We eat excessive amounts of carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, and we have a tremendous amount of diseases. The leading causes of death includes, cardiovascular disease, heart, strokes, dementia, cancers. 80% of these, I'm convinced, can be prevented with knowing patients, taking good blood tests from them, and giving them a good diet. Now, everyone's diet is not the same. Someone might need a little bit more carbohydrates, someone might need protein. So you have to personalize everything. So that's how I started doing what's called integrative medicine. You don't take anything as the best approach because someone is telling you. You take the best approach because it works. It will work, or maybe work on the patient. So for example, if magnesium, giving a little bit of magnesium in the night to this patient has blood pressure, works for his blood pressure, that is a million times safer than giving a blood pressure medicine that will eventually cause some side effects. So it's not choosing or arguing with nature or pharmaceutical or prescription. It's giving the best at the time. Now, if the patient comes in with sky high rocket, blood pressure, I do give a blood pressure medicine because it's very, very dangerous to have very high blood pressure. You have to bring it down. When things aren't an emergency and things are just chronic and everything is calm, then you can work with the patient using nutrition, some supplements, and get them back in a better shape. Now, what I see is the biggest impact on people's happiness and health is their quality of their social connection. That's why Caro, I think, is amazing, because she's so connected and so authentic that she really is a happy person. And I think that happiness brings her to a good state of health. So the more connected you are, and I'm not talking about having a lot of friends, I'm talking about having good quality friends. That has been proven many times, multiple studies, long studies, that the more quality, the more people that you have that you're connected to of quality, you're going to live a healthier life. So when I see a patient, I don't particularly go and ask them, what is your medical history? Do you have diabetes? Do you have migraines? No, I ask them, the first question I ask them is, who do you live with? And they tell me, okay, I live with my wife. Okay, and then you have children, and I get to kind of understand that person in a level that really makes the difference. Because if you don't understand the emotional component of the person, you're never going to get them to change and to stop doing things that are potentially bad for their health. So it is magical.
Super. That's really interesting. So when you first treat a patient, before you even ask them about their medical history, you want to find out about their environment.
Yes, it's called, I created this program, it's called Total Connect. So the first questionnaire I ask is where they live, who is their number one, number two, and number three. So for example, if someone, like for example, if you're in the expressway and you have a flat tire, who's your number one? Who would you call? Okay, maybe you call your husband. Okay, so number one is your husband. Let's say your husband is on vacation. Who's your number two? Oh, it's my aunt, et cetera, or my grandson. So if I understand number one, number two, number three, I already understand that that person might be okay with respect to the connection. If that person says, I don't have anyone, I don't really know who to call, I call 911. I know this person needs a lot of help, because if you can't help someone having, reducing their isolation. Isolation is a killer. People that are alone are extremely depressed, and they get a lot of disease. So I ask them about that. I ask them about who they are. Most people that I see are over 65 and they're retired. I ask them who they are, what was their profession, what did they like to do. I ask them about what is the most stressful part of their world, be it their finances, be it that their husband is ill with dementia. And then I ask them, what is the thing that you really love to do? What really makes you, you? And then you ask them where they're from. So this is the Total Connect. And if you have pets.
I have a question for you, Dr. Sanchez. So right now that we are in the state of the pandemic, and we are in a situation where isolation is actually being encouraged, right? So many people are social distancing. Older people, especially, that are higher risk, are being kept at home, and we're trying to protect them. And what I'm hearing is that you're saying that the most important tip, I guess, for optimal health and happiness starts with the connection and with your environment.
Right.
So how do you combat that in a situation where, like right now, when we're in a state of crisis and pandemic, how do we deal with that?
Well, it's devastating. It's more devastating than anyone can imagine. You're surrounded by friends, but I see patients that haven't seen anyone in weeks, and the only people they see is someone, maybe a son, that drops off some food in the front of their house. It really is creating a tremendous epidemic of depression, anxiety, isolation. People are actually, the drug rate of prescription for antidepressants have been totally going up. It's very sad, not only with the older adults, but even younger adults. So one of the things that I do, obviously, is to figure out the circumstances where they live and what they can do to break out. If they have no one, the first thing I always say, go to nature. Nature rebalances. Go outside, see the birds, see the trees. Just being outside in the sunlight creates a tranquility and a relaxation. You're not cooped up in a house, so being out in nature is very important. I always tell them, who are your friends? Who can you call? Because I'm sure they're all also as well sad and depressed. try to connect that way. They got to be sleeping well. They got to be physically active, because when you're not physically active, you actually become very depressed and anxious. Physical activity is the best antidepressant and anti-anxiety drug that you can imagine.
Okay, so let me stop you there for a minute. Physical activity. Can you define physical activity? Does it have to be intense working out? Do you have to be a marathon runner? Does it walking around the block count?
Well, that's a good question. But, you know, depending on who you are, but generally, I mean, to prevent sedentary behavior. Every time you don't move, everything becomes stagnant. Your back is stagnated. Your neck is stagnated. Your lymphatic system is stagnated. Your circulation is stagnated. So preventing stagnation. Some people need a little bit more than other people. So you just walking and moving and stretching reduces stagnation. If you've been sitting down for more than 20 minutes, that's it. You're becoming stagnant, and the whole voltage of the body is becoming depleted, and it's not moving as it should. Now, that's that physical activity to kind of, for the people that are in like the COVID crisis, et cetera, et cetera. But there's other different activity, you know, when you're talking about anti-aging and creating a little bit of a stress in the body that creates more muscles and an anti-aging effect. And that one is high intensity. And it doesn't have to be high intensity for half an hour. It could be little blocks of 1 or 2 minutes of high intensity 3 or 4 times a day. That will do the trick sometimes on creating
1 or 2 minutes?
Yeah,
that's
1
it?
or 2 minutes. Well, it's curious when they've done studies on what happens to muscles and what happens to the blood chemistry related to the anti-aging effect of exercise. And there have been a lot of people trying to biohack, trying to have shortcuts. Like, what is the least amount that you can actually create this effect in the body doing exercise? One person actually had a great study, and it was about 3 minutes 2 times a week. But it was an extreme high intensity that it would most people wouldn't even tolerate it. So if you do extreme, meaning you do it till exhaustion. For example, if you're walking, and throughout the walk you do quick sprints until you're totally exhausted, I'm sure most people can't sprint more than 30 seconds. They'll probably end up sprinting 15 seconds and 20 seconds and be totally exhausted temporarily. So that's kind of the intensity.
That's funny that you should say that, because today I've been running every night with my son for months. Orly started to run with me. And today we started walking, and we started the walk, then we started to run, and then his foot was bothering him, but he had all this energy. And I was like, why don't we just do sprints? So we're here in Fort Myers. So I said, okay, let's sprint like the sidewalks from like one side to the other sidewalk. So we would sprint, and then we would walk the next one, and then we would sprint it, and we would walk the next one. And we were more exhausted from doing that than our regular run, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it works out pretty much more muscles than just doing one type of exercise. That type of high intensity takes a tremendous amount of different muscles to coordinate that intensity. You can do it many ways. You can do it in blasts of pull-ups. You can do blasts of swimming. But I think one of the best ones is actually sprinting. We humans, as we, you know, throughout years, we were walking a lot, and then all of a sudden we would sprint, either to hunt or to not be captured from a wild animal. So sprinting is in our nature, and walking as well. Now, long distance running, particularly, I don't think that's in our background, in our nature. I think it's mostly walking, sprinting, climbing, jumping. But long distance running is great for stress. But I do know that sometimes when someone doesn't have enough nutrition on board, can overdo it, and sometimes they prematurely age, but they think they're actually doing benefit. People do cardio workouts, sometimes 45 minutes, which sometimes overall it's not causing the effect that it should. I think you should always consider what it does metabolically, and does it have a health benefit. And sometimes doing certain exercises that people do a lot isn't creating any benefit. Sometimes they feel better, sometimes they lose a little bit of weight, but sometimes there are other different types of exercises. And sometimes people repeat the same kind of exercise. Some people that lift weights all the time, they do, certain weights, like let's say they do with their biceps. And when they do that, 20 reps or 30 reps, and when you ask them to do different kinds of tasks, they can't, because the only muscles they've grown are the muscles to lift a barbell. So I think you should always consider natural movements first. People should be able to jump. People should be able to stand up from the ground without using their hands. I think people should, depending on the age, obviously. But there are a lot of things that can tell you that you're in good shape. Can you do a handstand? Can you do things like that? Can you actually do a pull-up? Most people can't even do a pull-up.
Okay, so so extreme exercises, and I'm putting this in the chat for the benefit of our audience, are sprints. I'm assuming you said pull-ups is something else you said.
Yeah, it's kind of the like high intensity interval training.
What about jumping jacks? Would that be
jumping jacks, lunges, all that stuff?
Lunges. So we'd have to do 1 to 3 minutes to exhaustion.
Well, what I do to a lot of my patients, to give them a little bit of, do 30 seconds of some exercise that will be beneficial. So I tell them, okay, start doing like lunges or sit-ups, but do it for 30 seconds, and do this 6 times during the day. So that would be basically 3 minutes. So you make it easy. Now remember, which is kind of funny, we can say a lot of things about exercise and lifestyle, but if it doesn't create pleasure, if it's too painful and it's not easy, it's not sustainable. So you need that triangle of human behavior to be within whatever you're going to describe. So if you describe something of high intensity, that's very painful. But if you do it for 30 seconds, it's tolerable. Sometimes it creates a little bit of pleasure, and it's not that hard. But if you tell them to do.
So hold on. So you said that it has to be pleasurable. So this is a conversation I often have with my girls in the community, because I think that people, for the most part, the stigma with getting healthy is pain and sacrifice.
Right.
The stigma, because people enjoy, when I hear, one of the most common complaints that I receive is, well, I want to enjoy my life, which means I want to eat foods that are technically unhealthy, or I want to drink alcohol, or they don't want to stress their body to that point, and they assume that in order to have a healthy lifestyle, you have to be constantly in a state of sacrifice, right? Because you are not eating the foods you want to eat, you are not being sedentary, you are not doing the things that you otherwise would want to do. You are
right.
So how do you? So talk to us a little bit about that.
Believe it or not, most of these things that we do that kind of thinks that we're creating health, and we are creating health, but it really doesn't increase our lifespan. It will increase our health span, but most times people that do all these things that take great sacrifices develop cancer, develop heart disease, eventually develop dementia. So you have to be very stealthy. That's why you kind of have to look at the science behind a lot of things. So many times people do things that are painful and don't contribute actually to get them healthier. Now, the triple, have pleasure, no pain, and easy, needs to be integrated. Obviously, you do 30 seconds of high intensity, it creates a little bit of pain, but later it creates a pleasure, and it's not that much of a sacrifice. And if you do it within the community, or a doctor or someone, or a healthcare practitioner kind of supporting you, you say, oh man, that makes sense, and that's doable. For example, if you want to drink alcohol, one of the leading causes of death among women are breast cancer and cancers in general. Alcohol, tremendously damaging to the hormone system, increases estrogen, and really predisposes women, especially, to get cancers. I mean, you really have to look at the science behind a lot of things. So all of a sudden, if you want to drink, because life is it's relatively short and we want to enjoy. Well, I've developed a strategy. It's called the 180. So whatever the alcohol does will maybe damage you, but what can you drink or what supplement can you take maybe 15 minutes before drinking the alcohol that will blunt the effect of the alcohol? For example, if you go out in the sun and then you get sunburned, and then you go out the next time and you put a hat and you don't get sunburned, well, the hat protected the skin. So what is the hat for alcohol? So there are many things that you can take that detoxify the alcohol. For example, milk thistle. There are certain greens that you can take. Alcohol drains vitamin C and magnesium. So you can take a little bit of like sometimes you got to drink supplements to do this strategy. So before your alcohol, you can take like 3 little pills with water, and then you can drink the alcohol, and the alcohol is detoxified way better and your hormones don't get out of whack, which is kind of an interesting concept. So you can enjoy the alcohol and still not get so much of the damage of the alcohol.
And when you suggest that, do you still think there should be a limit as to how many days a week, for example, you would drink the alcohol, or is that something you could do every day?
There are a lot of recommendations and depending on what your ethnic background. There are some people that don't have, the liver has enzymes that detox alcohol. There's about 20 different ones that can actually handle alcohol. Some people have all 20. Like people from Ireland, they're actually genetic variants. And some people cannot handle alcohol, cannot handle coffee because they have these pathways not in their genes. So you got to figure out how much you can handle. It's very good sometimes to do blood tests after drinking to see how your enzymes, your liver enzymes are elevated. See what you can tolerate. But it depends on the person. I don't think a woman should drink more than 1 glass of wine or an equivalent every day. I think 3 times a week is probably appropriate, but depending on what they're doing. If they're eating foods that are from animal, and I'm not against eating animals, but they're very high in estrogen generally because they're farm factory raised, et cetera. So your estrogen levels go up. So now if you're drinking alcohol, you can't detox the alcohol and your estrogen levels double sometimes. So depending on how you eat and what health status you are and how much you can tolerate and your genetics. There are many concepts that you can actually do. Let's say, for example, some people can't tolerate too much coffee, but they love coffee. And then they drink the coffee in the morning, but they get very anxious. Their blood pressure might go up a little bit. They get tachycardia, heart rate goes up. So sometimes you can actually put things in the coffee that's compatible with the taste of the coffee, a little cinnamon, a little chocolate, sometimes extracts of green tea, and you can drink the coffee and all of a sudden the coffee doesn't cause this side effect. And so you tolerate it better. So depending on everyone's, there was a study done a long time ago. It was very curious. People ate a hamburger. And then when they ate the hamburger, just a regular old hamburger, their inflammatory markers, C-reactive protein, interleukins, all those things that are inflammatory, that are damaging, went up for at least the next 8 hours. When a piece of avocado, which is very compatible with hamburgers, was placed in the hamburger and people ate the hamburger, they actually enjoyed the taste of the hamburger better. And these inflammatory markers went down about 30%. When the hamburger was made with a lot of spices, basil, oregano, it almost went down to 60%, the inflammatory markers. So guess what? You ate the hamburger, but the hamburger was full of herbs, had some really good fats, and it blunted. It was the hat, like going out in the sun, of the hamburger. So you still enjoy. So what I like to do is always ask people what they enjoy to do and try to make substitutes that are as tasty as the original. I don't want people to sacrifice. People really need to enjoy. So I've always tried to substitute things that are healthier, but not creating deficit. So most times when I deal with diets, I don't ask them to stop anything. I tell them just to add something. Like add olives, add an avocado, like the greens, just add more, pile on the greens. Don't change anything, but just eat more vegetables. And things transition that way. You got to make it easy.
Okay, so there's some questions on the chat, and I think that when you started talking about alcohol, you touched a nerve, because
Yeah.
people are super curious about it. So we've got Daisy said tequila. I'm not sure what the question was. Tequila, what
Yeah.
pills are these? I think she was talking about the milk thistle and the
Right.
different supplements. So if these people wanted to find out what these hats are for the alcohol,
Yeah.
where would we be able to find that information? Is there a place that we
There's
can?
no place. There's no place. No one that I've seen has done so much of that work.
Okay, so
I've kind of done a lot of protocols myself. There are some people that kind of know things that can create benefit when you eat something, but I don't think there's a source. So if you want to, everyone, you can, through Caro, you can ask questions, and I can, or you can, through my email or somewhere, you can contact, and I can always
okay,
answer.
so we need to come up with, and I think everybody's gonna like this, but we need to come up with like a protocol, like a list of
Right.
things that we can offer these people, so that if they are gonna
Right.
consume alcohol, that they can have they can put this hat on. So
Right. So
Candace wrote,
one simple thing is milk thistle, silly marin. But always consult your doctors or your healthcare doctors. Remember, I am a doctor. I'm a board certified family doctor. I'm an integrative doctor. I did my fellow in integrative medicine, but I'm not your doctor. So if I recommend something, it's general, just information, but always consult the doctor, because if you're on medication, these things sometimes can be, have some side effects.
correct,
But
correct.
bottom
And
line, milk thistle.
I'm going to take the opportunity to let everybody know we are recording this call. I have to let you all know that this call is being recorded. So if anybody asks any questions or whatever, it's going to be recorded. And I love that you said that, doctor. So yes, you are a doctor, but you're not their doctor. So you
Right.
can give general recommendations, but
Right.
obviously this is what we're talking right now is theory. Right. So, and I think that the lesson, what we really want to derive from the conversation today is, and this is the bigger point, is if we're looking for a life of longevity and we're looking for a life of health and happiness, it's not necessarily that we can't do certain things that we enjoy, but that we have to work to find ways to protect ourselves. So you're not going to not go out in the sun because you're going to get a sunburn. What are you going to do? You're going to wear sunscreen and wear a hat.
Right.
Well, the same thing goes. If drinking wine is something that you enjoy, then maybe there are certain things that you can do so that you can get the benefit of the wine. Arian Edward asked, is red wine a good antioxidant? Can I just drink 3 glasses once a week?
Sure, it has a lot of antioxidants. It has a lot of polyphenols. It has some benefit. When you're eating fatty foods, it's a driver of nutrients deep into the cells. So there's some benefit to alcohol. One of the things that I do a lot is tinctures, and these tinctures are usually alcohol extracts. So it's a driver. It also softens up the stagnation of fats. But definitely, I think it's a way to get your antioxidants. But I wouldn't say that's the optimal way. But did you say three glasses of wine?
They wanted to know if they could have 3 glasses of wine once a week.
Oh, sure. Yes. Absolutely. And then, I think generally you can actually have 1 glass of wine even every day if you're a male. I would say much less if you're a female, and depending on your genetics. But I would never recommend everyday alcohol. I think you should not do that.
So the other thing is that you had recommended back in the day 10 years ago, and I want to know if it's still on your list of recommendations, was for people that didn't want to have a spike in their insulin,
right?
To take apple pectin before they drink. Do you still have that recommendation?
Yes, but it's not only apple pectin. It's fibers. It's fibers and fat, and some fat as well. So you can take walnut before eating bread. You can have avocado before eating bread. You can have just regular old chia seeds or apple pectin. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to negate the insulin spike. But obviously, one of the good things right now that's happening, which is quite amazing, is not having to go to your doctor to find out how your insulin spikes are doing. So these continuous glucose monitors
Yes.
You stick on your skin. It does perforate the skin, so it's a little sensor, but it tells you the sugar every 5 minutes for 2 weeks, and then you change the cartridge. It's about $100 or so. But my God, there's nothing more detrimental, in my opinion, to your health than excessive sugar. It's one of the worst foods, refined carbohydrates, spiking your insulin, spiking your sugar, that causes more aging than anything else that I can imagine. So definitely, if you do want to know how your sugar is, these continuous glucose monitoring are pretty remarkable. I mean, they're really an eye opener. For example, many diabetics that have done this said, "My God, I thought grapes were very healthy," and their sugars went up to over 200 just eating like 6 grapes. Now, the grapes of this modern day is not like the old-fashioned grape that had a thick skin and seeds. So absolutely, that when you get recommendation to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, people are eating kind of fruits that are not nowhere near that how they existed in nature. The original apples was very small. It was a very small, like a little cran apple, very acidic. Now you got the Red Delicious, the one they call the sweet one.
The Gala, the Honey Crisp.
The Honey Crisp is what I'm thinking. So these are pretty much bombs of sugar, believe it or not. And people are thinking it's healthy, but it's really spiking the sugar, increasing the insulin, which increases your blood pressure, which you cannot lose weight on these things. But they're generally healthy. My favorite fruits are the berries. And for example, there's blueberries and there's wild blueberries. And if you look at the wild blueberries, that you can find them anywhere frozen in the supermarkets, they're much smaller than the regular blueberries. So go with the smaller variety always, and don't eat excessive amounts. You need really more vegetables than fruits, in my opinion. And going back to the question about the polyphenols and the antioxidants, there's a very remarkable antioxidant that's been studied for anti-aging, resveratrol. And so that was the big hype. You gave resveratrol to animals, you didn't change their diet, and they lived longer. And they found out that resveratrol has many properties that causes a good anti-aging effect. But you would have to drink the equivalent of like 100 glasses of wine to get the benefit. So sometimes if you do want the antioxidant effect from alcohol, you would do a scoop of berry powder with water and then drink your wine. Now, what I do many times, I have a really good quality berry powder, and I put like a half a teaspoon or a teaspoon into the wine. So now I create a medicinal wine, and let me tell you, it tastes maybe even better. So that could be an amazing combination for a lot of people. They want to get the benefit of the wine and enhance it and become medicinal wine. So with berry powders.
Wow. Wow. So we had
I wouldn't do that with fancy wine and someone gave you that wine. Yeah.
We had some questions. One of the questions that had been asked from the community that they wanted to hear, and we have a bunch of questions coming up here on the chat, but I want to make sure that I get these out to you.
Yeah.
Are what is the best way that to manage stress? And I think especially what are the best physical habits for managing stress? And I think right now, oftentimes when we talk about excessive alcohol intake, or we talk about excessive sugar intake, or we talk about sedentary lifestyles, a lot of it comes from not knowing how to manage your stress properly. So I think this is a great time to ask that question.
Oh, that's a great point.
Right? Yeah. Because if you can manage your stress, then your need to drink to right. Yeah. Your need to drink alcohol or your need to consume more sugars actually goes down because you're feeling good about yourself, right? Or you're feeling good about your body. So what do you think are the best physical habits to manage your stress?
Well, you got a whole spectrum of things that are for anxiety. I think like if you want to do one thing that's the most powerful is social connection, is connecting to someone. So if you're anxious because you're isolated and you're thinking you're the only one stuck in the home, you call your friend. Oh yeah, I'm also stuck, and I miss going to this place, and then all of a sudden just being bonded to someone that's suffering or having the same kind of stress is really amazing for the anxiety and the stress. It's like people that go through cancer, they join groups. And if someone had breast cancer, and then all of a sudden you joined a group and all the ladies had breast cancer, your anxiety and your stress level goes so much lower. So being connected socially, reaching out to a friend is one of the first things. Probably as powerful is exercise. Exercise releases all this inner cooped up energy. So exercise and reaching out to friends are very important. You can have a stress ball. Stress ball and physical moving and squishing your hand actually increases your parasympathetic system. There's two different nervous systems. There's one that revs you up, the sympathetic, and the one that calms you down. A stress ball is very good to increasing the one that relaxes. Another one that increases the parasympathetic, relaxing a nervous system is deep breathing. I like to take, when you're really stressed and you're like anxious, you take a deep breath slowly, like maybe like 5 or 6 seconds. You hold it for 5 or 6 seconds and you breathe out 5 or 6 seconds or longer or less. And you do that probably like 5 or 6 times. And it resets the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. So that's another great one. Now, there's a lot of things that actually cause stress. When you're eating too much carbs, it drains magnesium. So having enough magnesium supplementation would be good. There's a lot of natural supplements that reduce stress and anxiety. One of the ones that I use a lot is kava, is from the Indonesian kava. It's a root. It's fairly safe and it really relaxes the anxiety with a K, kava with a K.
Kava with a K.
Yeah, the ones that I like come in alcohol extracts, and you can do tinctures. You can do like, obviously this is just recommendations general, not for anyone. You have to consult your doctor, but you can do like 20 drops of kava extract in water, and you drink it, and within 10 minutes or so, you're more relaxed. There's a whole bunch of them. There's poppy seed, there's passion flower. There's a lot of things that relax. Smelling lavender oil is very calming to the anxiety. Going out in nature, when you're stuck in these artificial lights, getting natural light relaxes the body and you become less anxious. I think one of the things also that brings in overeating and binging is not sleeping, and it creates anxiety. So if you don't sleep well, that's terrible. So one of the most important, yeah.
So one of the questions that was also asked is how do you get optimal sleep? I know that a lot lot suffer with
it's an
poor
epidemic.
sleep. It's an epidemic of not being able to sleep.
People are taking all these things like Xanax, Temazepam, Ambien, and it ruins deep sleep. So it really is terrible for the overall health. Well, one of the things you have to start with in sleep is the morning. So natural blue light from the morning has a magical effect in the early production of chemistry, including melatonin in the morning, and it sets the circadian rhythm. So the body and the mind knows that this is the morning. So people that don't get that natural sunlight in the morning tend to not sleep very well. So as the day, so the morning.
So you're saying if you wake up, let's say if you're not an early bird, so you wake up at 11 a.m., are you missing that morning blue light?
You can still have 20 minutes, 10 minutes of the blue light, but you need to be out there getting the blue light. Obviously
you need to be outside.
You need to be outside getting that blue light exposure. It gets in the skin through the infrareds and through the UVB lights, and it gets through the eyes, and it stimulates and it tells the brain that this is the morning and this is the time you're waking up, and you start having the circadian rhythm. When you start ruining the natural rhythm of the body, you're supposed to wake up a certain amount of time, you're supposed to sleep a certain amount of time. So early morning blue light is awesome to start the process. Now, when you go to bed, you shouldn't have eaten at least 3 hours before. So at least take 3 hours before going to bed, before sleeping. The other thing is the lights, these artificial lights from the computer screen. So right now I'm seeing you and I'm seeing everyone, and it's a yellow tinge because I have a program called Flux. So it changes the light of my computer from that bright white and blue light into more of a yellow light, because it's the blue light that wakes you up. So you don't want that blue light in the night. So after 7, 8, 9 o'clock, if you're seeing that blue light, it starts waking you up, which is not what the brain wants. So when you see too much cell phone, too much computer screen, and you're trying to get to sleep, you can't get to sleep because the brain is already awake. And then if you do get to sleep, you produce, or you let go less melatonin, and you get disruptive sleep. One of the things that and actually looking at, I also have these glasses too. These are the blue blocking glasses.
Oh, how nice. That's awesome.
But they're different ones. Now there's clear that block the blue
but
light.
Just because you're giving a lot of information at once, so I want to make sure that everybody's catching on. So what I'm hearing is that when you wake up in the morning, you need to go outside at least for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, no matter what, every day in the morning,
right?
So that you can have access to that light. So
right.
Somebody asked, would exercise in the morning be best? And I don't know that is necessarily tied to exercise. I think it's just consuming that light.
Yeah, it's
right?
consuming the light. But when you talk about exercise, if you do exercise at 7 in the night, it revs up the body and the adrenaline and all the sympathetic nervous system. You don't want to rev up the body too late at night. So if you're going to do your exercise, I would keep it at least before 6 o'clock, maybe 7. You don't want to do after 7, do some intensity workup. There are a lot of things that cause sleep disruption. Hormones, one of the things that actually cause people do everything right and they still can't go to sleep. One of the first hormones that get decreased in women is progesterone. And it's very natural and it's very protective hormone. And sometimes you test your hormones. And if you have low testosterone, you can actually get a little progesterone cream at night. And that is very sedating and you get a little sleepier too.
Actually, somebody asked about estrogen. I saw this in the questions, and you said progesterone, and I don't know what the difference is between estrogen.
Well, it's the opposite. It's the neutralizer of excess estrogen. So you should be in balance, but most people have excess amounts of estrogen. So when
here the question was, I'm curious about increase in estrogen, especially when entering menopause. Would this help to combat less estrogen during this stage? I don't know what she was referring to.
Yes, definitely. One of the most protective compounds, which is naturally produced and it's in deficit, is progesterone. And that's the antidote. And it's so protective. When someone gets brain trauma, for example, and gets hit in the head, if you give IV progesterone, the brain inflammation lessens. It's a very potent anti-inflammatory. It's very relaxing and it's very anti-cancer. So when you look at most people that have cancer, especially the women, they're very high estrogen and low progesterone. And unfortunately, that's what happens. And if you want to look up an anti-estrogen diet, there's a lot of websites that you can actually see what foods increase your estrogens. I think one of the most powerful ones are... Yeah.
If you're entering menopause, do you want to increase your estrogen or you want to decrease your estrogen?
No, you want to decrease it.
You want to
increase your progesterone. The progesterone is the good one. Although estrogens are good, but it's just excessive amounts.
So the goal for women is to increase progesterone?
Yeah, that's a very good one, and it helps sleep. Now, men...
what about for men?
Men have tremendous amounts of estrogen, which lowers their testosterone. So men are very estrogenic these days. There's less fertility in the younger men. And the men start getting breasts, gynecomastia. And when I check their estrogen levels, they're almost as high as women sometimes.
Where are they getting this estrogen from?
Too much animal products, too much drinking, and too much carbs, which drive up the estrogens. And prostate cancer, one of the triggers of prostate cancer is having too much estrogen in the body. And it induces the rapid changes of a normal cell into a mutagenic or proliferative cell that wanted to grow. So
I have a bunch of people asking if you're accepting new patients.
Well, I thank you, but unfortunately, I am not. I'm catering mostly right now to Medicare patients over 65, but this is kind of what I always tell Caro, this is a project, and I never leave anyone hanging. So any questions, you can always contact Caro indirectly or directly and ask, and absolutely I'll reach out. And I do have a little Instagram.
Yeah, he has an Instagram, so I hope everybody follows him on Dr. Virgilio Sanchez Jr. on Instagram. Another thing that I want to talk about before we continue taking questions, because I know everybody's super excited, but I do want to mention this. Dr. Sanchez and I are going to be hosting a 5-day fast. And just so that you know, he is currently fasting as we speak, and he's on day 3, and he's here and he's alive and he's talking. And he's been fasting for 3 days. So he's going to be doing a 5-day fast with me. We're starting it on September 14th. If you want to participate, it will be from September 14th to September 19th. You will have access to this angel of mine for 5 days. He's going to be providing videos. We're going to have Zoom calls. We're going to ask, we're just going to do it together because we're going to cover all the sources, right? Community, fun, try to make it as easy as possible while restoring our health and doing something that's really good for our bodies. So if you guys want to join us, make sure that you follow us on Instagram and that you sign on to my newsletter so that you don't miss it.
I want to add, anyone on medication, anyone on treatments, I would not, ask them to actually go on a 5-day fast until they clear. And this is not the typical water fast. This is kind of a fun fast. There's nothing more potent to stimulate and rejuvenate cells than reducing your overall calories. And that's been shown in animals. You reduce their calories, they live longer. And you reduce calories in humans, their anti-aging markers go up. So what you have to do is convince the body that it's fasting. So there's a doctor, Victor Longo, that developed this fasting mimicking diet. And I kind of studied it and created kind of my version of it. So it's a fun fast, but with food that actually you can eat, but the body still thinks it's fasting. So it's kind of the fast that is kind of fun and doable. And it's for 5 days. And I'm on my 3rd day and I feel, pretty great. It's not 100% because you're fasting and you're cleaning the body, but let me tell you, it's worth it.
So my mom asked on the fast, and she was asking me, she takes a lot of different medications, if she can do that fast. So I'm hearing that no, she should not participate in that.
No, she has to consult her doctor, because if she's on medicine, for example, blood pressure medicine, it'll drive her blood pressure way down. And so if she's on blood pressure medicine, then she can have dizziness and fall. If she's on medicine for diabetes, this kind of fast totally corrects sugar problems. So if you're on diabetic medicine, you can have a low sugar, and you can actually, create really, really side effects that are very detrimental.
You know that we have one of the girls in our core challenge, doctor. I was so proud of this. One of the girls in our core challenge, when she started with us in the challenge 3 months ago, her sugars were at 300, and she was on all sorts of medications for the diabetes and all these other things. And by participating in the challenge, and I want to say that it's not just the food, because what I'm hearing from what you're saying, it's not just what you're eating. It's also the fact that she's in the community, she's in the chat,
Absolutely.
She's enjoying herself, she's opening her mind to new things, she's trying new foods, but her sugars are now at 112. She's down to 1 medicine, and even when she doesn't take that medicine, her sugars are not spiking anymore. So I thought that was awesome. Isn't that an amazing, cool thing? So I'm listening to all this that you're saying.
That's what I live for. All my patients, reversing diabetes, reversing blood pressure. It's really, really awesome to see that. And I see it all the time. And I'm so glad that she was able to get off.
And she's on here, by the way. She's on here.
And she's probably eventually become healthier. So I'm proud of her.
So we have a question. Hang on one second here. We have another question. If anybody wants to ask any more questions, make sure you ask them now. Before I answer this one, before I address this one, I want to ask you just generally, what do you consider being healthy? How can a person know if they are healthy? What are the steps they have to take to know that they are healthy?
Well, if they're having enough energy throughout the day, if they're not having excessive amounts of hunger at unusual times, if they're sleeping well, if they look well, if they have capabilities that they used to have like 5 years ago, and they're not just deteriorating. Like, let's say all of a sudden you can't go around the block, and you used to go around the block 10 times. But it's very hard to know who's healthy or not. Sometimes it's very deceiving. Sometimes you can check blood pressures, but I always like to do blood tests. And I do those blood tests that kind of, not the standard blood test, because sometimes you can say, oh, the doctor says my blood is okay. But you can have a sugar of 99 and it's normal, but that's not normal. An ideal human has a sugar about 70, 75 in the morning, usually. So that's ideal. You can have liver enzymes that are normal, but they can be very high normal. You can have a thyroid test and it could be 4 as the TSH, but optimal is 1.5. So if you have a 4, the doctor might say you're okay, but it's not. That's actually hypothyroidism. So you do stealthy blood tests. I like to do insulin levels. I like to do inflammatory markers, C-reactive protein to see if inflammation is going on. I like to check the hemoglobin A1C, which is the average of your sugar, which is one of the most detrimental and informative markers that you can actually check if you're aging quickly. It's the average of your sugar. It's a 3-month average as a blood test. So yeah, sometimes it's tricky to know if someone is healthy or not. But if you feel well, you're happy, you have friends, you can exercise, you sleep well, you have a very good appetite, you're moving your bowels daily. Generally, you can say that you're probably okay, and if your blood pressure is okay, but there's no way to know. There's might be something in your body that is stealthy moving and getting worse.
So the question after, are you taking new patients, is logically, do you have a doctor that you would recommend for those of us that don't have access to you, that can go through Medicare? So if you go through Medicare,
I don't have one particularly, but I do recommend, if you go on the website, functional medicine or integrative medicine, there are good practitioners all around Miami that practice functional medicine or integrative medicine, which is that type of style of medicine that I do. And yeah, there are a bunch of them, but I don't have any specific one.
Okay. So I got a private question about a child that went to an endocrinologist because he has started to get how do you say that? Gynecomastia?
Gynecomastia, right.
Gynecomastia. And the doctor brushed it off and said that he was just fat, but no blood work was done. So what would you...
Yeah, you don't need blood test. You need a lifestyle change. And you start with reducing the refined... So the first thing you reduce in that boy is liquid sugar, including sodas, including iced tea, including fruit juice, including natural squeezed juice. All that liquid carbohydrate, that's the first thing you eliminate. The second thing you would eliminate is the flour, from grains, whole wheat flour, all those grain products. So those are the two culprits in increasing your insulin level and increasing your estrogen levels. And then I would obviously try to reduce some of the amount of animal protein. Sometimes people eat too much protein. As you're growing, it's fine, but too much is too much. As you stop growing and you get into your 20s, excessive amounts of protein puts a burden in your body, especially animal protein. Animal protein is the perfect protein. It has everything kind of you need, all the essential amino acids, but it gives a signal to the body to grow. So sometimes too much protein, actually, you start growing. You start growing breasts, you start growing fatty livers, you start growing a belly, you start growing in places that you don't want to grow, like cancer, because it increases insulin and an insulin growth factor. And so limiting the amount of animal protein, going to more plant protein like beans and lentils and stuff, that's kind of the option is before testing, because it's so common that I think sometimes you could test blood, but it's almost so common that this would be the advice to start.
Okay, great. So people are putting on lists of providers for practitioners. So thank you for that. One of the follow-up questions is, are high protein diets bad? And that is not what Dr. Sanchez said. high protein diets are not bad, right? You just can't over
Well,
consume
yeah, some people
protein.
can't tolerate too much protein. And sometimes you want to go to one piece of steak or one piece of chicken or one piece of salmon the whole day. That's adequate amounts of animal protein. The rest of the proteins can come from plants, which is gentler for the body. Now, I'm not against eating animal products. It's just that sometimes it overstimulates a system, which is the insulin and insulin growth, the IGF-1 system. And this system actually is one of the ones that causes aging. One of the things that they've seen in people that live very long, 100-year centenarians, they have very low IGF, very low insulin, and they have very low growth hormone. So you hear these things as, oh, I need more growth hormone. Actually, if you think that way and you see a 100-year-old, it's not true. You have to actually reduce your growth hormone and your insulin and your insulin growth factor, especially after 2025. When you hit 30, 40, the last thing you want is overeat animal protein. It really is something that should be a little section of your plate, but it shouldn't be a massive amount of protein. Your body cannot handle it and it just revs it up. So, I think you kind of understand, and the quality of the protein too. There's a lot of antibiotics in foods. A grass-fed beef is completely different than a conventional raised cow. And there's fish that have mercury, there's fish that don't have. So there's a lot of different subtleties besides the protein.
So for our audience, since it's 10:04 already, and our sessions are supposed to be an hour long, I don't want to keep everyone too late, and I don't want to keep you, Dr. Sanchez, too late because you have to be up tomorrow morning. First of all, I want to thank you so much for being here because you have the most precious heart and you are the most generous person I've ever known.
Thank you very much, Caro.
And you really help so many people that for me, it's a privilege to introduce you to my community. So thank you for that. What I've heard so far is that we have to up our connections, stay as social as we can, do exercise without stressing our bodies to the, we don't have to overly stress our bodies, but just do 30 seconds of high intense exercises, really put in good practices to have better sleep, eat good foods, limit our alcohol as much as we can. And when we do consume alcohol, put on that protective hat in the form of milk thistle, apple pectin, and other little cheat sheets, which we're going to have to come up with a list for these people. And do blood tests to figure out how your body responds to foods and how your body responds to the lifestyle that you're living right now. So I think I got most of everything that you pretty much, yeah. That I think that we summed it up pretty well. So
I think a great brain. Your brain is working well.
This is a funny story, but when I met Dr. Sanchez when I had my second child, and from the time that I met Dr. Sanchez, Justin was like 10 months old, to the time that I became pregnant with Ryan, which is my last child, my lifestyle was completely different. My eating was completely different. Everything was completely different thanks to Dr. Sanchez. And I remember calling him and telling him that I was pregnant. And his response to me was, "Oh my God, you're going to have a super baby because you eat all these superfoods and you have this great lifestyle.
I remember that.
You're going to have a super baby." And he's 7 years old right now. And he is truly a super baby. He's a super child as well as the other ones, but they're awesome kids. And it's been a privilege to navigate my life with you by my side. It really
my
has.
privilege. And thank you for inviting me. So yeah.
Okay, so we have to do this again. I think that we're gonna have to create some sort of like cheat sheet or something for all of our listeners. If you guys have any more questions and you want to have another session with Dr. Sanchez, please put them. You know how it works. Send me DMs. Send me an email. Put your questions down, and we can host another one of these Zoom calls and answer as many questions as as we can. And everybody join us. For those of you that are not on heavy medications, join us for the 5-day fast starting September 14th. That's going to be a lot of fun. And I think we're good. I think we're good. Everybody is putting comments here, doctor. I don't know if you can see them.
Yeah, I can see them.
All right. So people are saying, thank you very much. We're going to have a fun fast.
You're welcome.
We need a second session. So happy to be part of CORE. Awesome. 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 This is great. Okay. All right. We're good. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
You guys are free to go.
And sleep well.
Yes, doctor.
Well.
So are you going to finish your 5-day fast? Are you doing 5?
Yeah. And the curious thing, because of the pleasure and no pain, I started it on Sunday night to finish it on Friday afternoon, because the weekend is the weekend. So yeah.
The weekends are tough.
So it's 5 days, but I split the day. So I think that's the best method. So actually.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
All
nice.
right.
All right. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you, everybody.